This tutorial will cover a fan favourite in the men's hair industry in a shop floor friendly manner, simplifying and breaking down each step with ease. In the spirit of one of our main cutting philosophies, reverse engineering, I prepared this haircut by breaking it down step by step, meaning I chose to cut the top first instead of the sides in order to instill my shape and structure. Before beginning, I inspected the fixed factors and used them to separate the top from the sides with an unconventional square panel which purely followed the head shape and the hair growth patterns. This separation happens just above the rounding of the head and gives me more clarity at the beginning of the process. The first cut I made was to set up my shape and my first clipper guideline by using my scissor. I'm starting here due to the fact that it's arguably the most important part of the haircut, as it will set up the connection point between the top and sides. So remember to utilise the fixed factors and head shape to help you visualise the end result prior to starting. This point where I made the first cut was the point at the crown where the hair growth changes direction. The reason I started here is due to the fact that it's the most reactive due to the hair growth patterns. So in order for the look to be functional, I must not resist the natural hair fall. The choice of section was a forward diagonal section so that I remove weight and create shape at the same time. I worked through the right hand side first before coming back to my starting point, and then I worked through the left hand side. The reason I started on the right was due to the fact that I personally find this side more challenging. When switching sides, it's important to change your hand position to follow the direction that you want the hair to sit, and make sure to use elevation plus your guide through the crown in order not to cut it too short. Also remember that body position is important. Take a step with each new section to create a true round shape horizontally. From here I unclipped the top of the haircut and visually created a round shape. This part of the process is not too technical. I'm using Lockie's head shape to guide the horizontal shape, which is round, and I'm using muscle memory and the head itself as a leverage point to keep the choice of length consistent. I work through the right hand panel first, then through the middle, and finally through the left hand side before doing some cross checking. I point cut the entire shape standing behind Lockie, as I chose not to fully control my vertical shape due to this haircut's textured and relaxed nature. This will leave me with more of a dishevelled, textured look which needs minimal texture applied in the dry shape. I always check and point cut any excess length out of the corners to slightly round them off. Finishing up the wet shape, my next step is to pre-style the hair before applying the clipper work. I used some matte paste as a pre-product while the hair was still damp, and that helps spread the product seamlessly and evenly throughout the hair. On my Dyson Supersonic, I used the gentle air attachment to begin and quickly switched over to the professional concentrator to achieve a smoother finish. I started the process from the crown with a high velocity and medium heat setting. Then I used a paddle brush and groomed the hair into its natural position. Once the hair was fully dry, I then switched to the cool setting with a lower speed in order to set the product. As you can now see, when the process of the wet shape is executed correctly, we can clearly visualize what we need to fade into. To help me even further, in this instance I chose to get the crop fringe to 90% before moving through and fading the sides. Due to the technique I used to cut the top, I was left with some excess length and bulk through the fringe. To debulk and smoothen this area, I used a number 2 guard with the grain prior to lining it up. Starting in the middle and combing the hair to natural fall, I used my detailer to create a strong line, leaving enough for the refinery stages. It's super important to check the hairline prior to using the detailer to create our cropped fringe. The last thing we want is to push that hairline back too far or eat into the natural hair fall. To start the fading process, I started with my highest clipper guard number to clear out the canvas. The choice for this haircut was a number 2. Our fading techniques all follow a systematic process of starting on one side, repeating on the other, and connecting through the back. So this is where the system really kicks into place. Once I've done this on both sides and connected through the back, I then established my lowest clipper number, which is the shortest clipper number before skin. We like to call this the 00. Make sure to keep this guideline parallel to the shape that you created with your highest clipper number. Working out the spacing here is critical, and a general rule of thumb that we like to use is 2 fingers depth from the highest point to the lowest. This ensures that we have enough space to fade out Repeat the process on the other side and connect through the back. Check for balance and symmetry. A really great way to do this when you're in the barbershop is to use your mirror. Always remember that your mirror is one of your most important tools. Once these guides are in place, I then worked through one side of the fade completely before moving on to the second side. I started by using my foil shaver to bring the hair underneath my 00 line down to skin, making sure that I leave a few follicles of hair below the guideline to help my fading process. Then I moved on to a number 1 guard closed, bringing that directly underneath the number 2. Once I was happy with that colour spread, I put on my 0 guard, and with that I worked just underneath the number 1. Then I skipped down to my 0.5, which is no clipper guard and the lever open. I placed that below the 0 guard and slowly started closing the lever as I worked down to my 00 line. So fading for us is all about colour spread. All I'm looking for here is to spread the colour nicely across the canvas. So following the process here is extremely important, as most of this technique depends on consistency within the motion of the clipper. I recommend using a clipper with a taper blade, as the bevel will enable the clipper motion even more. It will actually be quite helpful to you in the process. It's essential to follow the process through and refine after, as sometimes you don't see the results until you reach that very last zero line. So think about it as macro and micro. We like to use the 80-20 rule. 80% is macro, 20% is micro. So what I'm looking for here is the colour spread to be even across the canvas. Sometimes that requires me to segment the head and work on specific micro segments before moving on to the next section. So when applying this technique, try not to stick too religiously to the numbers. They are there primarily just to guide you. And lastly, I use my trimmer to knock out the faint balding line. Once I got through 80%, I sharpened up the hairline on the corner to achieve more definition before going back in with my 1.5 guard and scissor over comb to soften the transition between the top and the sides. I repeated the exact same process on the other side, and as you can see from this wide angle, the clipper is very rarely flat against the head. I'm always aiming for a graduation. Through the back corners, I used a fully descending process to control the colour spread even more. This is due to the fact that the hair is most dense in these back corners. Once 80% of the process was followed through, I then started to use techniques such as scissor over comb and chipping to even soften or pick out any discrepancies, using my excellent edges texturizing scissors to achieve softness and pick out any darker spots. During the refinery stages, I went back through and dusted off the hairline, making sure that that crop is really sharp. To finish off the haircut, I used a little bit more matte paste to create some separation and texture. Thank you for watching this tutorial to see how I did the beard and how I approached the beard for this look.